With Ambiorix still at large, Caesar wants to close the loop and capture him. Will he succeed in his intent? Subscribe to the channel first and watch this new video. You might find the answer. Dividing his army, Caesar ordered Titus Labienus to march with 3 legions toward the ocean into the regions bordering the Metapi. He sent Gaius Trebonius with an equal number of legions to devastate the area adjacent to the Aduatuci. He himself decided to go with the remaining 3 legions to the river Scheldt, which flows into the Meuse, and to the furthest parts of the Ardennes, where he heard Ambiorix had gone with a few horsemen. Upon departure, he promised to return in 7 days, knowing that grain would be due to the legion left as a garrison on that day. He encouraged Labienus and Trebonius to return by that day, if it was advantageous for the state, so they could share information, assess the enemy's strategies, and initiate a new campaign. As we have explained before, there was no specific force, no stronghold, no garrison that could defend itself with arms, but a scattered multitude in all directions. Wherever hidden valleys, wooded areas, or impassable marshes offered any hope of safety or refuge, people had settled. These places were known to the locals, and the situation required great diligence, not so much in protecting the entire army, for no danger could threaten all at once when they were scattered and terrified, but in preserving each individual soldier. This was partly important for the safety of the army, as the desire for plunder drew many far afield, and the forests, with their uncertain and hidden paths, prevented them from forming up. If one wanted to complete the task and wipe out this breed of criminals, it would be necessary to send out multiple detachments and scatter the soldiers. If one wanted to keep the soldiers in their ranks, as the established order and custom of the Roman army demanded, the location itself would favor the barbarians, and they would not lack the courage to ambush from hidden spots and surround the scattered soldiers. In such difficulties, all that could be foreseen with diligence was taken care of, ensuring that any harm inflicted was minimal, even though everyone burned with the desire for revenge, rather than causing harm with any loss of soldiers. Caesar sent messengers to the neighboring states, calling them all to him with the hope of plundering the Eburones, so that the Gauls would risk their lives in the forests rather than the legionary soldiers, and at the same time to wipe out the race and name of the tribe with a large surrounding force. A large number quickly gathered from all sides. These events were taking place in all parts of the Eburones' territory, and the 7th day was approaching, the day by which Caesar had planned to return to the baggage and the legion. Here it became clear how much fortune can accomplish in war and what chances it brings. With the enemies scattered and terrified, as we have described, there was no force that could cause even the slightest fear. The news reached the Germans across the Rhine that the Eburones were being plundered, and that everyone was being invited to join the pillage. The Sugambri, who lived closest to the Rhine, and from whom we had previously mentioned the Tencteri and Usipetes being received after their flight, gathered 2,000 horsemen. They crossed the Rhine with boats and rafts 30 miles below the place where the bridge had been built and where a garrison had been left by Caesar. They reached the first Eburones' territories, capturing many who had fled and dispersed, and seizing a large number of cattle, which the barbarians prized highly. Enticed by the plunder, they proceeded further. Neither the marshes nor the forests hindered these men, accustomed to war and banditry. They inquired from the captives where Caesar was. They discovered that he had gone further away and that the whole army had departed. One of the captives said, "Why do you pursue this miserable and meager plunder when you can now be the most fortunate? In 3 hours, you can reach Aduatuca. Here, the entire wealth of the Roman army has been brought, and the garrison is so small that it cannot even man the wall, and no one dares to step outside the fortifications." Tempted by this promise, the Germans left the plunder they had gathered hidden and hurried to Aduatuca, guided by the same man who had revealed this information. Cicero, who had kept the soldiers in the camp with the utmost diligence according to Caesar's orders and had not allowed even a single servant to go outside the fortifications, on the 7th day, doubting whether Caesar would keep his promise of the number of days. Since he heard that Caesar had gone further and no news of his return was brought, and moved by the voices of those who called his patience almost a siege. If it was not allowed to leave the camp, expecting no such misfortune that they could be attacked within 3 miles despite the enemies being scattered and almost destroyed by the 9 legions and the large cavalry force, sent 5 cohorts to gather grain from the nearby fields. There was only one hill between them and the camp. Many sick soldiers had been left behind in the camp. About 300 of them, who had recovered during this time, were sent together under a single standard. Additionally, a large number of servants and a great number of pack animals, which had remained in the camp, followed with permission. At this very time, and by chance, the German horsemen arrived and immediately attempted to break into the camp through the Decuman gate, from which they had come, without even being noticed due to the woods that covered that side until they approached the camp. So much so that the merchants who had set up their tents near the rampart did not have time to retreat inside. Our men, surprised by this unexpected event, were greatly disturbed, and the cohort on guard barely withstood the first attack. The enemy surrounded the camp on all sides, trying to find an entry point. Our men struggled to defend the gates, while the location and fortifications themselves defended the other approaches. There was turmoil throughout the camp, with everyone asking each other the cause of the commotion. No one knew where to take the standards or where to gather. Some declared that the camp had been captured, while others insisted that the victorious barbarians, having destroyed the army and its commander, were now coming. Many invented new superstitions based on the location, recalling the calamity of Cotta and Titurius, who had perished in the same fort. With such fear spreading among everyone, the enemy was confirmed in their belief, as they had heard from a captive, that there was no garrison inside. They tried to break in and urged each other not to let such a great opportunity slip away. Publius Sextius Baculus, who had previously led the 1st century under Caesar, and whom we mentioned in earlier battles, was left behind sick with the garrison. He had been without food for 5 days. Distrusting his own safety and that of everyone else, he went out unarmed from his tent. Seeing the enemy approaching and the situation being critical, he took up arms from those nearby and positioned himself at the gate. The centurions of the cohort on guard followed him, and together they held off the attack for a while. Sextius, having received severe wounds, fainted and was dragged away to safety by his comrades. In the interval created, the rest of the soldiers gained enough confidence to stand on the fortifications and present the appearance of defenders. Meanwhile, our soldiers, having completed their foraging, heard the clamor. The cavalry hurried ahead and recognized the danger. There was no fortification to receive the terrified men. The newly conscripted and inexperienced soldiers turned to the tribunes and centurions, waiting for orders. No one was so brave as not to be disturbed by the sudden event. The barbarians, seeing the standards from a distance, ceased their attack. At first, they thought the legions had returned, as they had learned from the captives that they had gone further away. Then, realizing the small number of our men, they attacked from all sides. Cicero's court's again under siege. Will he resist until Caesar is back with his 3 legions? Subscribe to the channel and activate the bell, not to miss the next video with the result of this new challenge.